Wait, if Ryan Choi can... And then... Holy fuck! Could Takar's knife really be an effective weapon? Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the final Chamber of the Wraith theory video thing for 2017. I will be making a bit of a clarification video in 2018 explaining a little more of what I'm trying to do with the channel. My name is Brian, and today we're looking at the newest character in Injustice 2, the mightiest of Microns, the one and only Ryan Choi, aka the Atom. Now, you might be wondering, wait, the Atom? Isn't that supposed to be Ray Palmer? Actually, recently, Ryan Choi became the Atom after Ray Palmer. And in the Injustice universe, that's explained because Ray Palmer is trapped in the Microverse. But I'm not interested in any of the lore or backstory as to why we got Ryan Choi instead of Ray Palmer, yada yada yada, that don't matter. If you looked at that throw, here, I'll show it again. This throw is ridiculous. Why? Because he goes in through your ear, into your brain, and then makes you slap yourself. And obviously you're looking at me going, he's controlling somebody's brain by going through their ear. How do you know he isn't just, beating things up, and then you try and slap him out, and then that knocks you unconscious? Well, I have a challenge that should disprove that notion to you. I want you, and you specifically, not anybody else, just you. I want you to slap yourself in the side of the head so hard you knock yourself unconscious. Can't do it, can you? That's because your brain prevents you from being able to harm yourself to extreme degrees. It's why you can bite through cooked chicken bones and steak, but you have a much harder time taking a chunk out of your arm. Your brain is like, dude, stop! So, obviously, whatever Adam is doing is completely bypassing that. And I believe he is indeed messing with your brain. And there is a real-world analog that can explain this a little bit better. But first, let's have a quick look at your brain and see what exactly it's all composed of. Because when you look at the human brain, it's actually quite fascinating. Better lighting, better results. Now, obviously, if you're going into somebody's brain in order to mess around with it, it isn't necessarily the easiest thing to do. You need to manipulate the parts of the brain that control your hand and then make them slap themselves right in the side of their skull. And another thing that you might be saying, well, hang on, doesn't Adam kind of keep his mass when he shrinks? Admittedly, that would make for a sort of sensible thing, but really, I think it just makes more sense for him to be controlling your brain, because he has gone into people's heads before. Like in this scene from the Injustice 2 comic, where he saves Harley's life by defusing the bomb inside of her noggin, for instance. Or how about here, where he is basically threatening to give Superman either a seizure or a stroke with a kryptonite dagger if he tries to break out. That kind of thing is really, really scary, and it's actually one of the more interesting things that Adam does, and that's even considering his super move. Now, obviously, not every part of the brain is equal. Your frontal lobe isn't doing the same thing as your cerebellum, and obviously, you might be wondering, well, what part of the brain do I got to control? Now, of course, the very nature of brains is very, very complex. Your brain is the single most complex natural structure in the known universe. I'm not exaggerating on that. You would think that, as we have human brains, we would probably know a thing or two about them. We don't know a whole lot, but we have been able to come up with several very nice diagrams for how brains generally work, and I'm even going to generalize those because I'm not a licensed neurologist. I don't have that kind of brain power. Hey? But where you would want to be targeting for voluntary movement is the cerebrum, labeled on this diagram in the brain. The cerebrum controls many things, but it also controls primarily your voluntary movements. So if you're able to tweak the neurons in here and mess around with the cerebrum to make the opponent hit themselves, you would have to go there, and then you're making the opponent hit themselves. And even potentially bypassing the aforementioned threshold of pain. Like, you can hurt yourself, but you can't knock yourself out or rip chunks out of your arm. At least, as far as I know. If you can, please show me. But then, of course, that leads to, well, what about the cerebellum? And if you happen to know what the cerebellum is, then, well, good for you. Here's the thing, though. The cerebellum tends to control involuntary movements and balance. This is also a really good spot to target if you are the atom, because attacking the cerebellum means you can have your opponent going from well balanced to basically being drunk, something like that. But now some of you more devious viewers are probably thinking, well, if I were the atom, I could make somebody slap themselves or lose balance. But what else could I mess with? Well, you can mess with a lot. But before we get any further into that, I want to make a quick, natural anecdote thing and explain one of nature's most powerful mind-controlling agents. And if any of you people are fans of The Last of Us, you already know where I'm going with this. So, what is this mind-controlling natural organism you might be wondering about? Well, in the scientific circles, it is known as Ophiocordyceps unilateralis, or cordyceps for short. But you Last of Us fans would know it as that freaky-ass mushroom that makes people go crazy! Well, you're partially right there. There is no species of cordyceps anywhere that controls anything higher up than an invertebrate. But the fact that cordyceps exists at all should freak you out. Here is some footage from the BBC television series known as Planet Earth, the first one, wherein ants are infected with this particular species of cordyceps, and you'll see what happens. They are basically made by the mushrooms to go to a good location, or carried there by other ants that just want them to get the fuck out of here! And suddenly, a mushroom grows out of the back of that ant's head. And by grows out of the back of their head, I mean, look at this thing! It's like as big as the ant itself! And then, that mushroom is going to rain spores down upon, potentially, any other ants that might be in the area. Now, this documentary series also goes to show several other cordyceps species that infect other kinds of invertebrates, from grasshoppers to tarantulas. And the fact that a fungus, I can't exaggerate this, a fungus, neither plant nor animal, is controlling the mind of an insect, goes to show how freaky nature is. And also goes to show that, in a way, Adam's abilities are founded in nature. How fucking crazy is that? But now, I have put you devious little bastards on hold for long enough. What else can you break? Paradoxically, I'm actually overheating, so the fact that this blanket is like 10 degrees colder than the rest of the area right now, that's why I've got it on, is paradoxically I'm cooling off by putting on a blanket. Crazy, right? Anywho, so cordyceps aside, what in the name of Ryan Choi could you be breaking? Well, why don't we have a look at the brain and see what we can break? Well, if we look at the frontal lobe, that controls emotions and impulses. So you break that, you can change how people kind of express themselves. And there are many ways that you could do that. Hell, if you look at the case study of Phineas Gage, he had a metal rod fired through his skull at incredibly high speeds, survived with a quarter of his brain missing, mostly from the frontal lobe, and he went from a polite, punctual person, alliteration, to a rude, crude, and mean son of a gun who his own family was like, that's no Phineas Gage, that's someone else. Oddly enough, it actually was. So you could destroy somebody's identity and change who they are by doing this. You could also destroy their memories. Remember, the brain is where memories are held, especially in the hippocampus. Damage that, and you could give somebody permanent amnesia. Or, even worse, take away their ability to remember anything. Could you imagine if you were able to basically just say, you will never remember anything ever again? That would be crazy. And that's just a small sample of some of the things that you can do when you mess with the human brain. So be careful, Adam. You don't want to turn Superman into an amnesiac. Or maybe you do. I hope you enjoyed this video on the Atom. This is the last Chamber of the Wraith theory video for 2017. I hope you enjoyed learning a little bit about the Atom and about one freaky ass fucking fungus. And as always, DFTBA.